The rootsTrust user interface has some custom controls designed specifically for rootsTrust that I would like to familiarize you with. Also, there are a few user interface conventions used by rootsTrust that you should be made aware of. First, the custom controls. Beneath the menu bar, you will see the tab labels for the 7 views of rootsTrust. You are presently looking at the person view. Notice that the text of all the tab labels except for person is green. That is because each of these tabs contains data. I call this behavior announcements. The label of the currently selected tab always has black text on a white background, whether it contains data or not. When a tab contains no data and is not selected, the text of the label will be gray. While the tab control is not a custom control or unique to rootsTrust, the announcement behavior, I believe, is. If you look at the left side of the window, you will see a cameo or vignette photo of the current person. And below that, a column of buttons that I call the left panel buttons. Notice that these buttons also have announcements, green text indicating when data is present. Each button corresponds to a pane of data. Tabs are space-oriented. That is, when you click on a tab label, you are always transported to a different panel. The left panel buttons are subject-oriented. That means that when you click one of these buttons, you are transported to a different screen entity, which may or may not be on the same panel as the current entity. So if I click the Residences button, a new panel is displayed and the cursor is placed in the Residences text box. Now, if I click the Education button, which is totally unnecessary in this scenario, the panel does not change, but the cursor moves to the Education text box. Notice that the border around one of the buttons is thicker than the others. That indicates that that subject is what is currently in view, education. Think of the person view as a long, narrow page of information, and that rather than scrolling through this info, you use the left panel buttons to jump through it, skipping over the parts you are not interested in right now or that have no data in them. Underneath the event summary, you will see a row of one or more very faint buttons that I call sleepy buttons. They stay out of the way of your viewing experience, or sleep, if you will, until called to duty by you moving your mouse over them. Buttons, sleepy or otherwise, are intended to be short in length, but sometimes a button's label is too curt to unambiguously reveal the button's functionality. So many of rootsTrust's buttons have tooltip text associated with them. Hold the mouse cursor over the button and a small text box will be displayed that contains a brief description of the button's functionality. If you still need more clarification, click the Help button, the mentioning of which leads us to the next topic, context-sensitive help. rootsTrust has context-sensitive help, which means that the help that is displayed when you request it is tailored to what you are currently doing. So if I click on the event summary, as I just did, and then the Help button, help is displayed that pertains to the event summary. Similarly, if I click on the Occupation tab, and then the Help button, help about the Occupation tab is displayed. A number of rootsTrust screens have a device on them that is similar to a sleepy button in that it is barely visible until you move the cursor over it. But that is where the similarity ends. I have no name for this device, but the text it contains is always the same: hidden fields. When activated, it displays a small form showing the values of hidden, non-editable fields associated with the current object, in this case, the person object. The person ID is rootsTrust's unique numeric identifier for the current person. If we were viewing an event, the event ID would be in this first position. If any of the next three fields has a value assigned to it, it was imported from a GEDCOM file. The final field, last changed, is a date timestamp recorded the last time this person object was modified. Some of rootsTrust's tables have a very narrow column used for displaying a check mark, a star, or some other small symbol. Since the column is too narrow to display its description in its header field, a question mark is stored there instead. If you mouse over the question mark, a small form is displayed that defines all the symbols that can appear in that column. If we look at rootsTrust's person view, we see that it has three underlined labels. These labels are also buttons, so I call them label buttons. They are always underlined and always bold-faced. If I click the father button, I will be transported to the individual who was the father of the person who had been the current person. Similarly, if I click the wife label button, I will be transported to his wife instead. 5 of rootsTrust's 7 views has an index table associated with it. For example, the person view has the person index, which contains a list of all persons in the database arranged alphabetically by surname. Similarly, the index on the place view lists all place objects in your database. Above each list is a combo box, which can be used to filter the contents of the table. For example, the person index can be filtered by sex, ancestor status, and by membership in a user index, which is a user-defined subset of persons in the database. User indices are covered in another video. Just below the index table is a navigation text box used to get quick access to an entry without having to scroll over hundreds or thousands of entries. This database contains almost 8,000 persons. Let's say I want to get to my ancestor Anders Persson, who occupies slot number 5,238 in the index table. When I type a P into the navigation text box, the table immediately scrolls to the first surname in the table that starts with P. I continue typing EHRSZ, and there he is. If you're wondering how I typed that strange-looking S character, I used a rootsTrust keyboard shortcut that's discussed on another video. rootsTrust has several custom combo boxes that provide feedback to the user prior to making a final selection. Let's say I want to add an adoption event, but I don't know who gets the event, the child or the adopting parent or parents. So, making sure that the person view is active, I click on the Add Event Sleepy button, which causes the Select Event Type form to be displayed. I then click on the vertical tab label Ordered List to get access to a combo box which has an alphabetically ordered list of all supported event types. You'll see that as I traverse the combo box with my mouse, a description of the highlighted entry appears in the description text box below. So we see that the adoption event is to be assigned to the child and not the adopting parent. If I had selected the other vertical tab, the category tab, and then the early life horizontal tab, I would have found the adoption event as a radio button. Notice that the radio buttons exhibit the same behavior as the custom combo box on the other tab, namely as I mouse over a radio button or its label, a description of the radio button under the mouse cursor appears in the description text box below. Now let's go back to the place view. The first entry in the place index has been pre-selected and its corresponding fields have been populated on the form to the left. The detailed place description panel up here has 6 text boxes for describing the hierarchy of a place's administrative divisions. Above each text box there may or may not be a label. A set of labels for this particular place has been selected to match its locale, Denmark. If I wanted to change the labels, I would use the area name combo box to do so. Notice that as I traverse the combo box with my mouse, the labels above the 6 text boxes change to match the highlighted area name. If I had not selected an area name for this location, it would have defaulted to US Rural 1, which is what you see above, the default area name. This behavior is not normally available with combo boxes or radio buttons. It has been added to take the guesswork out of the 2 operations I have just demonstrated. That pretty much covers the subject of custom user interface controls. I would like to conclude by enumerating a few rootsTrust conventions. A label or label button can be located either above or to the left of the text or combo box it identifies. If the label is to the left of the object, it always ends with a colon. If it is above the object, it has no colon. The names of rootsTrust objects are capitalized in help files, menu entries, tooltip text, etc. when referring to database objects as opposed to real-world objects. Thus, a person with a lowercase p is an actual human being, whereas a person with a capital P is a database object that represents a person with a lowercase p. Similarly, a place with a capital P is a database object that attempts to describe a place with a lowercase p or geopolitical entity. The other object names that you will encounter are family, source, and repository, Repository is a collective term that includes libraries and archives. Most standard rootsTrust buttons, those that are not sleepy buttons or label buttons, come equipped with a small icon positioned on the left of the button. These icons are consistent throughout rootsTrust, so for example, an OK button will always have the same icon. This concludes this video. Please be sure to watch the videos that discuss the menu bar, the toolbar, and each of the rootsTrust views.